In December 2013, the children of Meliandu village discovered hundreds of Nobody knew what had killed one-year-old Emile Umanu. His sister.
Il dit, le village Mathieu, le village Mathieu, le village Mathieu, le village Mathieu. Il a commencé à crier.
Là, nous on se voit en l'endroit où il m'a poussé. So I found a ma pengima a lero chaichino banaya banlandwa ha mavu. China chuchuo from Minsina Colola.
Khalil's blood would later be tested.
In 2015, a 34-year-old American doctor was volunteering at a hospital in Sierra Leone. A patient with Ebola came in. 12 days later, this doctor started feeling sick, and then he tested positive for Ebola. He felt weak, he had trouble walking, he grew a blistering rash that looked like a bruise. He was evacuated back from Africa to the United States. At the hospital in Maryland, day 8 of illness. The man is jaundiced, so his liver is failing. His watery stools are all red, so his blood is flowing out of his body. His muscles become so weak he can't breathe by himself, as a tube is put down his throat so that a machine can breathe for him. But then his eyes started deviating to the right. He had all the signs of meningitis, and an MRI of his brain showed his brain was inflamed, meaning Ebola was in here. When the man was starting to recover in the hospital 20 days later, his eyes started getting inflamed. This is what an Ebola case looks like if the patient gets care in time. It causes fever, massive fluid loss causing electrolyte imbalance, which leads to muscle failure, causing the person to become so weak that their respiratory muscles can't allow breathing anymore. And then hemorrhage starts as the liver fails. The kidneys and the heart shuts down as the brain becomes inflamed. On May 11th, 2026, a 59-year-old man was in a hospital in Kampala, Uganda. A few weeks earlier, he had arrived from the Democratic Republic of the Congo across the border. He had come into contact with many people before he fell ill and tested positive for Ebola. 3 days later, he passed away. His body was transported back across the border for the funeral, but this border province in the DRC is where a 2026 Ebola outbreak was first reported. 531 suspected cases and at least 131 deaths as of May 19th, 2026. Ebola is spread through bodily fluids. It's not airborne in the sense that simply breathing can transmit it, although sneezes that involve drops getting into the eyes, nose, or mouth, maybe. The 2026 incident has been declared a health emergency around the world. If you're in America, I would pay attention, but always approach everything with caution. Even though the 2026 outbreak is a different strain than what happened in 2014, in 2019 they released a paper on long-term effects in survivors from that 2014 outbreak. Memory loss, muscle pain, and eye inflammation linger for more than a year. And that's what happened to the 34-year-old man in 2015. The treatment right now is supportive care. Give IV fluids, get the machine to breathe for them, give them blood products for the bleeding. And luckily, he was able to make a full recovery.
Another mother is grieving at the main hospital in Mangwalu, believed to be ground zero of Congo's most recent Ebola outbreak. She's alone and overwhelmed. We're told her 26-year-old daughter has just died of suspected Ebola. The woman wants to be close to her child. Yet with this virus, even that can be dangerous. People who die from Ebola remain highly infectious. That's why burial teams are trained to handle them in protective gear, to disinfect the body and keep families from touching the dead. But those rules are breaking down. People are angry and afraid. Health workers have been threatened and some even attacked. And part of what's driving the mistrust is that the disease is unfamiliar here. With no approved vaccine or treatment, many patients die despite receiving care. Some people here aren't even convinced the disease is real. As deaths mount, trust in the response remains fragile.
Ebola iko juu bado wakufa nayo sana. Kifo nyenjo kunaonesha saa Ebola iko.
As a mototaxi driver, he fears possible contagion from his customers, as well as the broader mistrust growing in the community.
Petetre inapasha kwa sasa baile baonje gisi biko nafika ndio watu wanakuwa naoga ile maneno.
This is the first emergency delivery flown in by international aid organizations. Hygiene kits and desperately needed medical supplies are headed for the hospital treating suspected Ebola patients. Ethnic militias and rebel groups in the region make it difficult to move around, and with the added tension within the town, the government doesn't take any chances. As the supplies reach the hospital, so does a family that's come to collect the body of Bienfait Marasto. Doctors say he died of Ebola, but without a confirmed test, the family is in doubt.
Mesina kosa kama ke epidemia yenye biko nasema kama inatoka wapi. Zamani maneno le pali kwa kapandana mungwalo.
Marasto, who was filmed by the New York Times just days before he died, worked as the hospital's lab technician. His sister says his symptoms did not appear to be serious.
Jamie nasema biefe pana kufa na Ebola. Selomi. Biefe na kufa tu na nini? Kicho tu walume malaria.
She says he came to the hospital because he assumed his colleagues would save him.
Nyuma Mungu mara moya, nyuma nyako mara moya ba doctor. Doctor tapasha rudisa ame me bana shindikana kusove ame modoko wangu. Mimi nashangala sana.
Her grief has become doubt, and in Mangwalu, that doubt is just one more thing helping Ebola spread.
The latest Ebola outbreak is outpacing the response, and the International Rescue Committee now predicts it could become the deadliest outbreak of Ebola on record.
The outbreak is completely out of control. People doesn't trust that, the Ebola is a reality.
When we have fought Ebola in the past on this scale, it has been a combination of the Ministry of Health, WHO, USAID, CDC. USAID is fully gone. CDC is badly weakened. WHO has been badly weakened. The US, of course, withdrew from WHO and cut off all funding.
The virus is affecting parts of Congo and Uganda. These are the dire scenes in Ituri, the worst-hit region in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC, where civil war, which has displaced around 3 million people, further complicates efforts to track and contain the disease.
Are you seeing new cases of Ebola suspected and confirmed in the region every day?
Every day. Patients keep coming,
Health officials believe a rare strain of the deadly virus was possibly circulating for up to 3 months undetected in eastern parts of the DRC. And that late detection means the true scale of this epidemic, which the World Health Organization is calling a global health emergency, is still emerging.
So there are a few things that set this outbreak apart. One is the momentum it has right now. There are now more than 1,000 cases of this that are known, and that is likely an undercount, perhaps even an undercount by a factor of 2 or 3. To put that in perspective, the huge West Africa outbreak that caught the world's attention back in 2014, and which I worked on for USAID, took about 4 months to get to 1,000 cases. And that was really a turning point when it exploded. This outbreak already seems to be at that point and at that level of explosive transmission.
What is the level of urgency right now on this?
I think it's as urgent as, it's about as urgent as any Ebola response has ever been.
Because Ebola spreads via bodily fluids, health workers must work in protective gear to safely remove bodies of the dead. But they're often met with mistrust and sometimes anger from remote communities in early stages of their grief.
It's just because of the burial thing, the burial system of the way they're using, because the thing that really incited people to start now revolting.
Grace Casimiri, an independent reporter living in Bunia, described watching the outbreak unfold and the growing outrage from families in mourning. Just days ago, angry crowds attacked and set isolation tents and treatment centres on fire in cities at the epicenter of Rampara and Mongwalu.
It's the way of burying their members, because it's somehow coming in conflict with people's culture, people's belief. You know, you need to respect the dead and send them off with all the respect and love. But now they're not given that chance.
The situation become really very risky for all of us. You know?
Doctors operating in the epicenter of the outbreak tell us the fear and lack of trust from locals is so acute. Some symptomatic people are running away from isolation centres before their test results come back and potentially spreading the virus.
When the symptoms start and there's a really very, very confused, when people doesn't have trust, so they are running with their virus.
The doctors say a lack of hazmat suits and crucially lab testing capacity needed for accurate diagnosis and contact tracing is further undermining trust.
Now I'm in the front line. I don't have a lab. So how, I can have a trust, I'm worried that the population start to lose trust on me.
And much of the lab capacity in previous Ebola outbreaks, doctors and leading humanitarians tell us, was provided by the US. While over the past year, there has been a significant reduction in American assistance.
The US had a $900 million humanitarian assistance portfolio in Eastern Congo in the final year of the Biden administration. That sounds big. It is big. It's one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world. That dropped to less than $200 million last year.
And that cut in US aid, leading American NGOs say, is making it harder to fight the virus now and reduced the chances of detecting it earlier on.
Well, I think it is almost certain that we would have caught it earlier if USAID was still in place. USAID had a network of partners across this region of Congo. It had a mission, a permanent standing mission and team in Congo that was in regular communication.
Jeremy Konyndyk served under Presidents Obama and Biden as a senior official in USAID, working to tackle COVID and international disasters.
So I used to run that aid at USAID. What they're doing now is not any more, or it's not any more or less efficient, but it's much smaller. There are fewer partners, there are fewer clinics, and I think that's not efficiency, that's just downsizing.
And Congolese doctors on the front line against Ebola now appealing to the US to urgently scale up support.
People are really scared. It's our humanity, So my message is, we need attention.